couture is something that has been around for many, many years. Louis XIV, who reigned longer than Queen Elizabeth, actually, 72 years he was on the throne, from 1643 to 1713. And he, in my opinion, and most people who study and write about it, feel, excuse me? I can, wait a minute, I'll put it closer. Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
It's not clear now. I'll start to sing in a minute. So, when he took the throne, as you can see, he's very elaborate and very over the top. He's a person who believed in mixing patterns, obviously. But he began what was known today as the couture because everything he's wearing, from his hose to his jacket to his chemise, everything he has on has to be handmade. And the fabrics had to be made as well. So he established all these guilds around Versailles, where different peasants, etc., would make one of either the shoes, or they would weave the lace for him. Lyon, as you know, is a center of lace. That's where they got their lace from. So he began that, and also all the people in the court had to have clothing as well. You know, the ladies in waiting and the men, etc. So he was really the first person to begin this, and the French have you know, celebrated this all this time. Okay? Now he also, when he was on the throne, was not only innovative in terms of clothing, but in terms of architecture. So he was one of, as we said, the longest running monarchs, and he was interested in fine arts and architecture. And so here we have many of the buildings that he was responsible for. For example, l'Embalade building complex, the Place Vendôme, the Champs-Élysées, the Boulevard, as well as Versailles. And here is Versailles. Everyone knows this room, the Hall of Mirrors. And today, even it's used for a lot of the shows, the runway shows out of Paris. But if you've been to Versailles, you know how glittering this room is. It's surrounded by glass, and the gardens are exquisite. So it is really a beautiful spot. And here's some kind of product that came out of this environment. It's called a just a corps. It's a precursor to the frock coat. And men wore this at court. It had the waistcoat and had the breeches. Look how elaborate it is. Everything had to be made by hand. So you can imagine how many hours it took. As is true today, the couture also takes hours for things to be made. And so this is important to their history. And of course, everyone knows this lady. This was Marie Antoinette, and she's considered the arbiter of fashion. And look at her, you know, her hairdo and feathery and a beautiful gown that she has on, etc. All had to be handmade, obviously. She was very important to the court. So really, when we get really down to business in modern day, we look to Charles Frederick Worth. He's considered the father of couture. He was the one who established the first house in Paris in 1858, and he is considered the father of couture because he sought to promote not only the clothing but French culture. He dominated the Paris scene for the entire half of the 19th century, and he made Paris the couture capital. And then his son also took over from him after his death. So these are some of the things he was known for. His innovations, the House of Worth, his ball gowns were really the most famous item that he created. Oversized crinolines. We know what a crinoline is. When I tell my students crinolines, they don't know what a crinoline is. I said, you know, when we used to go to those proms, we used to wear those crinolines so our dresses would stick out, you know. But that's a word that's, you know, kind of old-fashioned, but in the 50s and 60s, we used it. Also, he was the first to use live mannequins, so that was very innovative. And one of his designs was a knee-length tunic over long skirts. So he was very innovative. This is one of his most famous garments. It is black velvet on ivory satin. It's an illusion of ironwork on top of the satin, as you can see. And I believe the Met had this in one of their exhibits at one time. But if you go on the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they have a timeline of history, and you can access a lot of these images on your own computer, and you can transfer them, you can print out if you need them for some other reason. So it's a really great resource. This is the one I was referring to, the knee-length tunic over long skirt. This was the next generation. This was his son's creation. Philippe and Gaston Worth, the two sons, also became designers, and this was one of their innovative ideas. So in order to be in couture, there are kind of three groups of designers, which we'll get to in a minute. The fashion house is like the regulatory commission for the Chambre. The Chambre syndicale is the haute couture part of the business. In order to be invited into the couture, you will have to produce 50 new original designs for day and evening wear. You will have to show 2 collections a year. You have to employ at least 20 technical people full-time and also additional 15 people. And only a few are allowed to use the label of couture. So there's a lot of rules and regulations. They also control the shows. They decide who gets invited, where you sit. But the French government is also very generous in that every year they support 2 emerging young designers, and they pay for their shows. A show can cost $2-3 million easily. So that's a great opportunity. I like this shop because it shows some of the original signatures of some of the designers, like Balmain, Chanel. You can see how their original signatures on their this was September 1938. So what kind of business are we talking about? There are private customers, which are a very small part of the sales. Who can afford it, right? They have a wholesale and retail customers. Once a retailer buys a garment from the couture or from the prep, they have the right to reproduce it and mention the name of the house. There are a lot of counterfeit losses, as you can imagine. As is in general, anything that's in the couture or in high-end goods has been knocked off, and you can find it on Canal Street, or you can find it on the streets of Europe, any kind of handbag you want, which is really very hard to control, obviously. And the designers license their names now. So I thought you would like to see first, this is the House of Chanel, and
With his haute couture jacket combine, one touch of Mademoiselle's spirit, one stroke of Karl Lagerfeld's genius, 130 hours of craftsmanship under the watchful eye of Madame Jacqueline, head seamstress. Begin with Karl Lagerfeld's sketch. Read it, decode it, interpret it. Take no fewer than 30 measurements on the client. On the Stockman mannequin, pin the muslin model. Adjust it, shape it, sculpt it to reconstruct the shapes and volumes of the sketch model. Build, dismantle, and rebuild to obtain the exact silhouette. In front, tailor a high waist for a closer fit. Round off the back to add boldness. Cut the sleeves high to liberate the movement. These are the secrets of Chanel haute couture, whispered from generation to generation. Assemble each of the 18 pieces and then wait for Karl Lagerfeld's approval. At a glance, he removes 2 or 3 buttons that were initially planned, picks the fabric, black tweed, the lining, black silk satin, the trim and the buttons specially created for this design. Mark the lengthwise grain of the fabric with stitches. Position and pin to the fabric each of the 18 pieces of the muslin model. Outline them with white chalk. Sew thread around each piece to highlight the shapes. Meticulously assemble the pieces and lace them together, by hand of course, because only by hand you stay true to the soul of haute couture. Verify the fit, its harmony, the suppleness. Entrust the jacket to Madame Jacqueline, who will take it to Hong Kong, London, Dubai, New York or Paris for the first fitting. Make alterations, lengthen the front, take in the sleeves around the forearms, remain faithful to the allure of Chanel. Sew the jacket by hand to stay true to the spirit that is unique to haute couture. Place the trim, ensuring that it gracefully lays on the tweed. It delineates the continuity of the garment and emphasizes its shape. Cut the fabric and embroider the buttonholes one by one. Sew on the buttons. Never a button without a buttonhole, as Mademoiselle would say. Secure the sleeves shape by slipping in a cigarette, a small band of fabric 2 centimeters long. Such little nothing, invisible yet perceptible, is the manifestation of singular tradition, expertise, and the excellence of craftsmanship. Once again, entrust the jacket to Madame Jacqueline, who will take it to Hong Kong, London, Dubai, New York, or Paris for a second fitting. In Paris, make the remaining alterations, since haute couture only happens in Paris. Sew in the lining because elegance is being as beautiful inside as outside, in Mademoiselle's words. Place the chain, the Chanel secret to weigh down the jacket just so, the finishing touch to ensure a perfect fall. Apply the label like a masterstroke. Put the order number behind it like an original work of art. Slip a spare button into a small pouch and straight stitch in on the lining. Gently wrap the jacket, tucking tissue paper into each fold. Slide in the certificate of authenticity for this one-of-a-kind piece. Add a few camellias, then fasten the packet containing the jacket. A design by Karl Lagerfeld that began as a subtle sketch and was brought to life by the expertise and experienced eye of Madame Jacqueline, the care and savoir-faire of the seconds, and the magical fingers of the seamstresses. This jacket will only come to life when worn. 130 hours of excellence in the work of the seamstresses at the service of creation. A unique jacket flowing on the body and exuding modernity. A timeless, contemporary jacket that upholds the idea of a subtle luxury that can be felt but never fully defined. This is haute couture, according to Chanel.
Now you know why it's expensive. Any impressions?
This thing about going to Hong Kong.
Yes, those are private customers in different parts of the world who have ordered this, had maybe one fitting in Paris, and then it goes back and forth until they get it correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you're obviously paying for that, but it's.
Is it always done by hand?
Yeah, everything,
Really?
everything. And the buttonholes are really important, you know, that's a really sign of it.
Where are the fabrics made? I mean,
Well,
either in the beginning.
A lot of them come out of Italy, actually. The best textile companies are in Italy,
Oh,
actually.
sure.
That's where most of the fabric, and most of the French designers go to Italy, as do others from the United States to buy their fabrics. And for silk, they go to Lake Como in Italy. That's the silk center of the world, really. So.
Because I have heard that sometimes their inspiration comes from seeing the
Yes,
fabric.
absolutely.
And then they come back to
That's-
their drawing board.
Yeah, that's very common. The fabric dictates sometimes the design of the garment, absolutely. Or the print, or the texture,
Yeah.
because a lot of fabrics have texture as well. So it's really fascinating. That little cigarette thing at the shoulder, you know, so all those little details, amazing. So these are some of the other masters that we are familiar with. Dior, of course, this was from 1957, and Balenciaga on the right from 1961. You can see the details of the garments. And here's another, this on the left is from 1950, still looks great, right? And 52, a Balenciaga black wool day suit, and Christian Dior to the right, also in wool. And to the right, look at those great coats. Christian Dior olive wool boucle coat from 1952, as well as Balenciaga from 1987. These are in mohair. The first in wool, the other in mohair. But you could really see how these silhouettes are still really very fashionable and probably copied by a lot of mainstream coat manufacturers in New York City and elsewhere. And here are four more really great designers: Givenchy, 67, Dior, of course, Cardin, 65, Balenciaga again, 68. So in order to be part of this whole syndicate, there were really three groups of designers. The ones on your left are considered permanent members of the chambre, and with the exception of Gustave Dorine, who's closed his business. And on the right, we have corresponding members. And then there's a group of guest members. And it takes 4 years for a designer to move up into the permanent category. So it's very structured.
And the rules are still the same?
I'm sorry? The rules are the same for everybody. Yes, if you're in the couture, you have to have all those qualities before you're allowed to do business. Absolutely. And then, of course, some of them have their boutiques within Paris and around the world as well, so.
Question.
Yes.
Since the word is usually used with many business names, so and such, couture, are there any rules to use that as a term in your business name?
Oh, yes, well, I mean, you know,
People do all the time.
in Paris, in France, is a law. If you copy or in any way, anything out of the couture, you can be,
No, I mean the use of the name itself.
yes. Well, I mean, you know, people do use the name, but it's not
I'm
legally.
wondering in
I mean, in the
Paris-
United States, it's really, people do anything they wish, you know.
But in Paris, are they not allowed to use that in the business name?
Right.
Because of a reference to it.
And because of the French laws that support it. It's not like in the United States, there's no laws in the US to protect the garment industry. There's a bill before the House right now that they're trying to get original designs protected. But as far back as we can remember, there's never been any movement in that
Right, but if
respect.
they change one tiny thing, then it's no longer.
So
your
that anybody
design.
who designs something, as soon as it leaves their showroom, it's copied. I remember when I was in the industry, you know, we go from showroom to showroom and, you know, you work in the back room with the designers and someone's unscrupulous and they ask for a sample to take up to their office to photograph or something that the store is doing, someone could easily pass it to a manufacturer, which was done.
Right,
I mean, it was done, it was common practice,
I worked for
unfortunately.
dress houses.
So you know.
17, and all we did was knock off.
Yeah.
It was the latest fashion.
Yeah, right, in the US, you're not, you know, it's, all bets are off, you know? It certainly is.
One more question.
Yes,
Valentino, Versace, and Giorgio Armani, how come they're so big? How
that
come,
doesn't mean that they're not good, it just means that they're not a permanent designer within the couture.
wouldn't they want to be?
Well,
I mean,
Yeah.
does
So
it have
famous in
any
their own
kind
right.
of, does it have any kind, be a
this is
member?
2021, don't forget, so we're in 2022 going.
I understand, but does it, to be a member, does that give them more prestige?
Oh, absolutely. To be in any of these groups, you certainly are prestigious, absolutely. Just a matter of technicalities as far as the shop is concerned. And then you have the prep, which we'll look at later, which is a whole different thing.
Just a question.
Yes,
Women's fashions would have the right over.
oh, the button?
And men's is the opposite.
Yes.
Why?
I have no idea. I think it's military. Honestly, I think so because, you know, a lot of, like the Burberry raincoat came out of the military.
Yeah.
Became famous. I think it is a military thing, honestly. I can't swear to it, but I have a feeling it is.
I know that they drive left hand so that sword
Right.
arms can be free. Right.
On guard, yeah.
And, because I always wondered about that.
Yeah. Well, I really, you know, I'm going to cover some menswear in here, but I didn't do that. Probably, when we're talking about Savile Row in London, they would probably be able to answer that question. So this is, now some of these people here, I don't know, you may not be familiar with their names necessarily. So I took a few of them to show you what their work is like. This is Christophe Josse. If I make it too big, it looks strange, but. Have some sound here.
Oh,
some time.
This is Frank's over there. This is 2022. Oh, sorry. Just trying to get a little lower. Having trouble with that one, but you can get the idea. And this one is from Alexis Mabille.
Oh, would I be a diva?
You're a diva.
No, would I be a diva?
Very dramatic. Yes.
probably, I think probably dry on political, I prefer political, I prefer political, just to sing. Let it be.
So, those are some of the permanent members, and you can see why. Now, the Pret is a division of the Chambre. This was started in 1973. The Couture really lost a lot of business over the years because it's so expensive, and very few people, women, can afford to buy the Couture. So the idea was to launch a ready-to-wear division, the Chambre Syndicale de la Pret-à-Porter, so it's a little different title. Okay, and then Pierre Bourget launched it in 1973. He was created and elected the president of it, and the goal was to draw more attention to industrial design, brought together YSL, Dior, Ungaro, Chole, Dardy, Sonia Ripiel, Kenzo, and Emmanuel Kahn. These were some of the original people that worked in the Pret. So this is ready to wear, this is off the rack, but again, it's very expensive, but it's not made to order to your body. You have to, if it doesn't fit you perfectly, then you have to get a seamstress or someone there to adjust it to your dimensions. So here's a little clip from Valentina. This is his new collection in pink. Pink is a really important color. Here. Everything was pink. And if you know the Barbie movie's coming out, will the bubblegum colors, and so if you've seen that, it's had a major influence on for men and women, not just the women's market. It is, this is the
Oh, it
prep.
is?
Yeah, this is the
Oh.
prep, yeah. Just get an in kind of thing here. The end. That's the, you saw earlier. This is certainly dramatic. And then we're moving on to more prep, this is BCBG. Some of you know the label. Oops. And Chanel Fall 2022 is doing a lot of signature tweeds, which is sort of her trademark. We wanted to say a little bit about the men's market. Okay. Dior. Look at that. I can make it a little larger for you to see. This is 2022. That means you do that. There you are. Military. Imagine why. To the end, you get the idea. Why is it 14? So from there, we move to Fendi, another important Italian house. This is the men's fall. We'll look at a little bit of it. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger for you. Distorted. Italian. part for menswear is Savile Row in London. It's been in business for 300 years of tailoring. This is the equivalent to the couture for women. Everything is made to measure for the gentleman. So you go into one of the great old time tailors on Savile Row, and you actually, it's a bespoke. The word bespoke in English means you spoke for the fabric, you asked for it. And so you pick your fabric, and then you're measured, and then they make a muslin on the body of the gentleman, and then he goes back for several fittings, or maybe it's long term, who knows. So it's hand-cut suits using a paper pattern, and the key parts are the shape of the jacket to the customer's body, creates a three-dimensional shape, and fineness of stitching. Recently, as I have here, they have started to offer some ready-to-wear suits. So here is an example of a suit in the making. You can see the same kind of markings that you saw in the Chanel video, which are done first with chalk, and then they stitch it. And you can see how the lapel is taking shape in the sleeve. And this shows you a workman, a craftsman, making the paper pattern. They're all hanging on the rope. They probably have the gentleman's names on these patterns that are their pattern for their particular suit. And there are different cuts that they have in the men's market for Savile Row. One is the traditional cut that we see here. Then there's their traditional drape, which you see in the lapel. And the third is an exaggerated cut. Wide lapel, nipped in at the waist, a little bit more, you know.
Did you do a cut for a woman?
What?
Could a woman get it?
Oh,
She made that?
Oh, I would say so.
I would like to do that.
Absolutely, definitely. And this is one of what it looks like in one of the businesses there. This is Henry Poole, who's one of the oldest on Savile Row. Considered the founder, and you see the gentleman in their very leathery, mensy looking spot, you know, with probably on the wall all their past customers, perhaps pictures, I don't know, or awards, etc. I've been on Savile Row, but I've never been into a gentleman's thing.
What do you think the base price of a Hillsbury costs?
Oh, I think you're starting at about 5,000 going up. Yeah.
£5,000.
Dollars, US dollars, yeah. But who knows now what the market is, what it's going to cost you, right? So the other important part of the couture, the knockoff, whatever you call it, is the handbag business. Very important, particularly in Italy. And so finally, handbags are money makers. This is where they really make their money, not on the garments, but on the bags. The global designer market by 2028 is going to grow, if everything stays as it is, to $98 billion. It's a global figure. And here we see the making of a Hermes bag, which is, you know, one of them. There's a waiting list for these bags, so you can imagine. So if you want one, you better put your name on the list. He's one of the craftsmen. He's been there 14 years. I can make it
Takes a long time to be able to make a correct spelling. I went to school for like 3 years, and then joined MS, and after like 2 term ship with MS, and I was able to make a bag after the 3 years. The handle of the kid is like most important and difficult things to make. It takes the bag takes in general about 18 to 20 hours. The handle takes about 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Everything here that's inside the handle of the candy bag. The detail is like important, every stitching, and it took like several months to be able to make a correct handle. For my first bag, I would say it took probably 40 hours, even maybe more, because the hours take a long time to know all the texture, the details. the red one, we're gonna be finished.
It takes, how long did you say, a year?
40 hours. Now, what's interesting with the growth of handbags, this is just a little graph that shows you the growth 2013 to 2018 in the value of Italian handbag exports. And there's a little village outside of Florence. Well, this one is the Prada factory right here, as we can see. And there is a little village, I thought I had a picture of it, right out outside of Florence, which was sort of like in these, not doing very well financially, but as soon as they started to develop a factory and make these handmade bags, their business really zoomed. So it's really, economically, it's been very good for areas that have produced these bags.
But Hermes is French, right?
Yes, it is.
But it's made in Italy?
Yes. No, it's made in France. But the other one that you saw here, this is Italian, the Prada.
Ah.
And any of the other Italian bags, the Fendi's, certainly, this year, Gucci, right, all the Gucci's.
There is a town in Italy, that the mainland Chinese actually took over most of it, and they then, say, our stuff made in China.
Yeah, I
now
heard
made
that's
in
Italy.
Italy.
It's a really good thing, right? So why did all of this count? The reason why it's important, for French culture, it's important to them. It allows for creativity, ideas flow to the mass market. It continues to foster the connection between art and fashion. This is really finally becoming accepted. At one time, there was a real controversy: is fashion art? And it's finally been recognized. If you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and you've seen any of their exhibits, you know it's art. Absolutely. Innovative tailoring, ideal for principles of fashion, color, silhouette, fabric. And those are the principles of fashion, those four things. And you can mix them and do different things with them in order to create a garment. So in 47, this was the new look. This was a Dior's. This was right after the war. And this was an important garment because it showed that, people now had, the fear of the war was behind them. The United States was booming. You could get as much fabric as you needed. So Dior saw it and made this really beautiful garment signaling the end of the war. We used some other beautiful garments. And they said, and it's true, after the war, if it weren't for the French couture, and they would not have been able to pull themselves out of the economic, situation they were in. Obviously, they have other products that are important. There's the cheeses and their wines, and of course now their tourism. But at that time, the fashion business was very important to their economy. Innovation for veils. Here we have a little shoot. This has happened already. Schiaparelli Spring Summer 2020 with fabulous colors. And then this was if you had been able to go to the Met when they had the Charles James exhibit for his gowns, you would have seen this. This was a really wonderful exhibit because what the Met did, as you will see in a minute, for each gown that he designed, they showed you on the floor there was a terminal, a computer terminal. And it unstructured the gown in front of you and structured it back in, so you can see how detailed his designs
Harold
were.
Coe, the curator in charge of the Costume Institute,
Harold Coe
and
speaking to the
co-curator
Met.
the exhibition Charles James Beyond Fashion.
And I'm Jan Leader, co-curator, and I'm consulting curator for the Brooklyn Museum collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
I'm thrilled that Charles James is inaugurating the Anna Wintour Costume Center and our new Lizzie and
What you saw,
Jonathan
there's
Tisch
the
gallery,
computer
together with
division on the right.
the Carl and Iris Farrell Athol gallery. If you wear a down jacket, if you've ever had a wrap dress, or a strapless gown, all of those things were innovations by James. Perhaps of the only, and certainly the greatest, couturier that worked in New York City. He was an artist who happened to be working in fashion as his medium.
our intention is to represent the entirety of James's design, vision, and also his innovative approach to everything that he did.
Given that James is considered
Showed you the
an architect
construction of
in
the
law,
product by
we thought that
destructing
there
it.
would be a real
That's a
affinity
word.
by working with actual architects. We approached Pillar Scafidio Renfro and found that they were fascinated by the challenge of presenting a designer who, throughout his career, aspired to the transformation of a woman's natural anatomy into a kind of built structure that transformed her natural shape.
The Apple Gallery is rather a smorgasbord of various.
So that was his exhibit. It was very, very beautiful, very exciting. So the other thing I wanted to show you now, I don't see it here, is back to my handbags. Okay, so just this week we had, I'm going to zoom back to my file. We're going to, this is the Fashion Week in New York, and I thought you'd like to see what was shown as some of the couture at Fashion Week. This is fall 2022. Iris Van Herten Couture Fall 2022. It's called Sheer Sensuality. Really sad. Beautiful, wasn't it? Fendi. Giambattista Valli. Gaultier. So as you can see, innovation and creativity is still alive and well after the pandemic. So maybe you have some questions about the couture and anything I can answer.
I'd like your opinion on now the big trend being eco-conscious with use of leather.
Would you say that again? I can see it.
The eco-conscious trend.
Right, the
Non-
vegan leather,
How is
right.
that going to fit? I've noticed that the prices of Italian goods, leather has gone skyrocketed as a direct, result of that lack of use of,
Well, I think in the US, there's a lot of vegan leather, vegan,
Yeah, which is
you know,
fake leather.
fake leather, you know. I don't know that it's going to happen in the European markets because their claim to fame is the originality of the natural product, whether it's silk or wool or leather, so I don't know.
I've been selling my clients on the style, I've been selling them the patent, the faux patent leather, because it's the closest thing that actually looks like the genuine article.
Yeah,
You can barely tell the difference.
I
between
think
patent
what's
and-
important is that people don't throw the things away. That's really the most important thing. People, donate, recycle, give it to a friend, sell it to somebody, don't throw it away. That's what we're trying to get people to
Well,
understand.
my other question is, I do vintage couture, that's what I sell, and
Right.
I am a retail stylist.
Right.
And I look at the original constructions, and they are couture, because my clients don't have to wear undergarments. They don't have to wear.
Because of the
three pairs
fit,
of
right.
slacks. The construction is outstanding, and that was
Right.
kind of the norm back then in the 30s and 40s, and before there was couture, there were department stores that basically had their seamstresses and, sweatshops all over the city sewing these things, but they were made this way. So it's very frustrating why things can't still be made that way.
Well, it's price point too. If you look at the bell curve of mass market versus, innovators and fashion leaders is very small. It starts to open up when it hits the mass market.
Don't you think that people would buy less and have more wonderful
But
things?
it's an attitude. Some people would like to have something new all the time, so
That's
they're not
more
willing
American.
to invest. Some people call investment wardrobes, maybe in my mother's time or when I was first growing up, we believed in that.
Yeah.
We kept things that we loved and we wore them, and then we would pass them on maybe to somebody in our family. But, we're trying, like H&M, when they came out with their fast fashion, it was like cheap, not cheap, I shouldn't say that. It was stylish, and it was,
Now it's cheap.
it was meant to be a price point for young women who couldn't afford to buy a Dior or buy a Fendi. So it had meaning for them. But then when this whole revolution of environmentalism hit, they too started to change the way they manufacture and encourage, less waste. That's the most important thing, really.
My daughter's 19 and her clothes are disposable. They're absolutely disposable.
When you have those Chinese like Shine, the manufacturer, you can buy dresses for $10, $12, and they flood the market. So, and kids, they don't have that much money, and so they want to look stylish, and they're going to invest in that, But that's really where the business is going, I would say. Less waste, yes.
Where do the couture shoes come in?
Oh, where are they coming from?
No, where do they come into this picture?
Oh, well, they would be part of your outfit. I mean, whether you go
I mean, is
to,
there a board that says these are couture shoes or not?
I don't believe so. I think it's an accessory market, which is different from the apparel market. And so anyone who designs in any of these images you saw, they would also design a shoe that goes with their garment. So that's how it comes into the couture. So it would be handmade, obviously, as it was in Louis XIV's time, made to measure, so to speak. And some of that, of course, will never hit the stores because it is a one-of-a-kind piece, really. Yeah. Yes,
The secondary market now, where you can buy used or already worn couture.
Right.
The Real,
Right,
there's so many of them. They claim that they can tell the difference between the real thing and the best knockoff. How do they do that?
Well, it has something to do with construction and exactly the fabric itself. Because you turn a garment inside out is where you start to see how much it costs to make it. The seam allowance, how many threads per inch, things like that. Have a lot to do with cost. When you lay a garment on a factory table and cut it, you can make it very cheap by locking in the pattern, so you use as little fabric as possible so you can bring down your costs, as opposed to making a more luxurious fit and using more of the fabric. So there are a lot of secrets in manufacturing that we can use to manage.
But there are so many really good knockoffs, expensive knockoffs.
Yes.
Actually, I
And
can
you-
answer for that.
And I wonder about that, to spend that kind of money
Well,
on the
it's
secondary
what the
market.
buyer wants. If the customer likes it, that's what counts.
Well, no,
we can't decide for them.
No, those places won't accept it if they think
I
that
buy
it's
some.
not real.
I can tell you that there are instances at factories where there's more material, and the real things are being manufactured without being sent to the company.
That's another business to
Right,
itself,
so there are,
so.
and they have numbers and everything else, and I have pieces, Dior pieces, that nobody can say, but they have everything. But they didn't go through the manufacturing house officially, but they're real. And then there's just knockoffs that are, like you said, they're so amazing. But like she said, there are so many rules with the waist, like an Hermes scarf.
Yeah, you have to really look. An
Yeah.
Hermes scarf is, if you've ever seen an Hermes scarf printed,
Right, both sides.
they have a showroom on 57th Street, and once in a while they have their artisans come to Manhattan. If you're lucky enough to go there, you can see a scarf printed. So if it's a 16-color scarf, there's 16 screens. And so the bare silk starts, and every time they put a color on the pattern, they have to move the screen. And then, of course, they have to dry it, and then they hand roll it. I mean, I have two. One I got when I graduated with my MBA. And the other one, my very first boss gave me. When I first entered I worked for Federated Department Stores. I was his assistant. He bought me one from Paris, and I still have them. And they launder, I wash them. I don't put them in the dry cleaners, and they still look beautiful. So it's an investment for some people, Yes.
Did you hear about the $94,000 heist of the Balenciaga bags in East Hampton?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I thought 94,000 for 40 bags.
Maybe 3 bags.
5 bags.
But where are they going to fence them when you really think about it, It's difficult to sell them. They're not going to get very much money on the dollar.
And Dan Speaker had an interesting article about the police chase, because he's a good writer. But I have to say that I was in Macy's, God help me, recently, and the shoe display seems to me to be nothing but ankle breakers.
Oh, okay.
Because the spike heels now, and the slingbacks, and the...
Well, I don't think you can really go by this Macy's in terms of trends.
No, no, but that's what they're showing.
Well,
That's because,
Yeah, I read
but there was an article about that because of the pandemic, when people were not buying the high chinny shoes and the Manolos, that after 2020 and 2021, they're now starting to come back, because they were very
well,
popular.
then the foot doctors are gonna be very popular because, you know, it's very difficult to
But
wear.
that was a traditional heel in the 60s.
Yes. The bag you showed here.
Yeah,
What's the price range? $5,000-$6,000?
Yeah, and if it's,
If it's an original.
Yeah.
$5,000, $6,000?
No, Hermes bag is way more than that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's like historic,
More?
30,000.
Yeah.
5,000, the Kelly bags are 35.
Yeah, and if,
That's
you
$35,000
read that
is
5 or
Hermes
6
bags.
years.
Oh,
We're not laying that shop with potions that are
You
relevant.
can go to the Perfect Purse.
The perfect
On,
purse.
Yeah, Hampton Road.
That's the Birkin, they have a lot of Birkin bags.
Yeah, they do.
that's
Yes.
Amazon.
Balenciaga.
I want to thank you for coming today.
Thank you.